Good morning, everybody, and thanks, Terry, for pointing out that I'm with BMW 21 years already. That makes me feel very young on this Friday morning. So yeah, 21 years with BMW, it's true. And I want to talk about transformation to you guys in the next, let's say, 20, 25 minutes, because transformation is what's in the DNA of our company. And I want to give you some examples from the past, but I'm especially excited about the timing because we are about preparing the launch of our latest generation electric cars that will happen here in the US in March, and I will give you some insights on that in the next minutes as well. So if you allow me, let's walk down memory lane a little bit and look at BMW and where we are coming from. BMW was founded as a company on March 7th in 1916, so 105 years ago. And the first engines we produced was airplane engines. That's what you see here behind me, right? So this is how we started the company. And back in the day, in 1916, aviation was more or less the field where the innovations happened, right? Just a few years later, perhaps you know, 1919, it was the first time that a plane crossed the Atlantic non-stop. So this is really where the innovations in engines came from. And BMW back then was already in the forefront of it. When you look at this image, you also probably now understand why we internally call our logo the propeller, because the BMW logo with the blue and white somehow is inspired by that, you might think, but that's just how we call it. In fact, the BMW logo is inspired by the Bavarian flag. You probably all know it, that the company is based in Munich, Germany, and blue and white is the traditional colors of the flag of Bavaria. So let's move on a few years. The next product to be launched was a motorcycle in 1923. That's the first motorcycle that BMW manufactured. It's called the R32, and it was one of the first motorcycles actually that was not a converted product. Normally in this day and age they took bicycles and they added a combustion engine to it and then it was a motorcycle, but this was one of the first that was a purpose-built motorcycle in this day and age. It was a very successful product, very doable, very efficient back in the day already, a whopping 8.5 horsepower back then. It cost around about 2,200 Reichsmark back in the day. I tried to kind of transfer that in dollars. It would be probably something around $1,500, and it was considered a very expensive motorcycle back then. But again, there was no big motorcycle market, so people didn't really have a feeling about what is an expensive or a cheaper motorcycle, right? It won tons of prizes back then, 3 world records. Again, the first motorcycle that BMW produced. And now if we move on with time, we see the first car that BMW has manufactured. And actually it was a licensed product. So BMW purchased a license to manufacture cars. This is the first dealership in Berlin, Germany that we opened. And now we are in 1929. But the BMW engineers, even back then, were not super happy with the product that we licensed, so they tried to immediately improve it. For example, they added adjustable seats for the driver and the passenger, or they wanted to create a possibility to open the windows in the car. And then, of course, they also wanted to improve the brakes, so they added a 4-wheel brake system to make the product better. So they stopped producing in license, and now you see the first real BMW. So that is a car that in 1993 was created. It's the famous 303, and this is the first BMW that is engineered by BMW, and you see it, it's designed by BMW, and also the birth of our iconic front kidney grille, the double kidney that you see and probably all know about, and that's why this is probably the most important car BMW ever produced, the first real BMW. And we never gave up on the iconic front grille, as you all know, and I'll show you some examples in a few minutes about that one. You could say the 303 back then, by the way, is also the birth of the 3 Series, which is one of our most successful and iconic cars. But if we now jump a few years ahead, actually over 40 years, this is the first electric car lineup of the BMW group. So if we go from the left, you see the first car that we have shown with an electric engine is the 1602, and that's the orange beauty on the very left-hand side. And if we move on and go into more detail on that car, it's quite interesting why BMW engineered and developed an electric car. Simply because in 1972, the Summer Olympic Games happened in Munich, Germany, and the Olympic Committee and the city of Munich tasked BMW to come up with a car that can drive in front of the marathon athletics, right, without any exhausts or fumes coming out of the car. So they wanted to have a car that makes the pace for the marathon and also that carries the camera. So we took an existing product, the 1602, and the engineers took the engine out and added some batteries. I have a few more images on that one, and here you see the not very sophisticated, from perspective today, what the battery situation looked like. They took the front and then simply taking 16 starter lead batteries that resulted in an electric range of 37 miles back then. A marathon is like, I think 26, an Olympic marathon, 26 miles, so it worked well. We produced 2 of these beauties. And the first innovation that the engineers wanted to put into that car was a so-called brake energy regeneration system to bring the electric range up a tiny little bit. Let's move on in time, 1991, for the Frankfurt Car Show. This is the very first all-electric and purpose-built and developed BMW. It was called the E1, the first real electric BMW that is not a conversion product. In this case, the briefing was, we make something for the cities of this planet, right, with not having to drive too much. And the E1 was pretty remarkable because in 1991, it already came with a range of 100 miles. I really think that's not so bad for a year like 1991. It's based on a sulfur sulfate battery, technology that we wouldn't probably use today anymore. And when it comes to charging, this was the 2-hour fast charging solution even back then already. This car even had a successor model. It's a one-off car, obviously, but there was even an E2. And the team from BMW brought it here so you can see it outside. So we brought it, perhaps you, in the day you want to have a look at that car. And again, the front kidney grille, as you see it, a very unique product. Also in regards to sustainability, the car was manufactured completely from recycled plastic back in the day in 1991. I think this is really something where the engineers gave some first thought. So let's move on, because now we go from one-off cars into series production, and that's the cars that you see on the right-hand side, the Mini E and the BMW 1 Series Active E. And I want to talk about these cars a little bit more. If we jump on to the next slide, you see when the first series production cars at BMW, when it comes to electric driving, happened. So we call these the Generation 1 and Generation 2 electric cars, the Electric Mini and the Electric 1 Series. But this was more like a test case for us. So we produced several thousand of those, but mostly to understand how does the customer accept these cars, what is missing, what can we do better. But we developed the drivetrain internally already. That's why we call it our Generation 1 and 2 in 2008 and 2010. And then you probably all know the BMW i3. We have it outside as well, and the i8. That's cars from 2013 and 14 with our Generation 3 drivetrain. And now we are already in Generation 4, and that's for our plug-in hybrids. So we have a wide range of plug-in hybrids available at the moment. We also brought them all here to Austin with us. For example, the 3 Series, one of our most important cars, the X5, but also 5 Series sedan, Generation 4. We sold in the last years until the end of this year around about 1 million of these electrified cars, so more and more every year. And of course, now we are ready to go to Generation 5, right? And I mentioned that the timing is perfect because we are preparing the launch of new electric cars in the US in March next year, what we will call Generation 5. And now, as you all know, the demand is really taking off, right? So more and more consumers and customers want to go into electric cars. Also from a legislation point of view, it's very much supported here in the US. And of course, there's more charging and more acceptance on the customer side of things. So yeah, we are ready for Generation 5. That's what you see here. It's the all-electric BMW iX. You also can see that car outside here in Austin, and the BMW i4. And I would like to start with some information on the i4, because that's a car that is very close to our heart. I talked about the 303 and the 3 Series, the sports sedan. That's the core and the heart of the BMW legacy. And of course, our i4 here is exactly that, right? It's a sports sedan, and our engineers love cars like that to give the customer this unique driving experience. We are the ultimate driving machine, right? But when it comes to an electric car, we definitely don't want to make any compromises. This is unacceptable for us. So when you look at the i4 and you go into a view of the car and what the technology looks like, you will immediately see that in the end, the engineers are thrilled to put electric drivetrains into these cars, because there are some things that make the ultimate driving machine. For example, a low center of gravity, right? And with the big battery pack underneath the passenger cell, The car is really glued to the road, and the driving experience is very, very unique. We even, for some of our very high performance cars, don't allow any glass sunroofs because we don't want weight on the top of the car. We want it underneath the passenger cell. So with electric drivetrains, that is perfect for our engineers. But I think it's even getting better because now they can mount 2 electric engines right on top of the front and the rear axle, which is also perfect from a weight distribution point of view, because for the engineer of cars, you want 50-50 to the front and the back, and we achieve with the i4 49-51. So this is almost close to perfection, and it also explains why this car is the ultimate electric driving machine in our sense, and why we are all super excited to bring it to the market now. What you see here is the M version, the M50, which comes with 544 horsepower. It accelerates in 3.7 seconds from 0 to 60. So this is really a lot of fun to drive that car. And of course, then we have next year we are celebrating 50 years birthday of the M brand, our high performance brand. You can imagine that all this knowledge and experience is then added to this electric car when it comes to aerodynamics and other things. On the outside, you hear some very, I think, very sexy engine noises, right? And some of our customers then said in the beginning with i3 and the other cars, yeah, it's great, we love the acceleration, but what about the sound? Well, that's something that we, of course, have to get our head around. There is sound, also on the interior. So we, for example, work together with the Hollywood conductor Hans Zimmer, who is creating the sounds for all of our electric cars, for the outside and also for the inside. So also something for the guys who don't want to get rid of the sound completely. There went some very creative engineering into that. And then there's the iX. One of my favorite cars, because this is of course not a converted car like the i4, because for the i4 there's also the 4 Series, a combustion engine driven product, but the iX is a purpose-built electric car. And it's more or less like from the size, and you can see it outside, an electrified SUV, SAV, the size of an X5, and it's purpose-built. And that's what the designers love the most, because from the interior, of course, they have less barriers. There's no tunnel between the driver, for example, and the co-driver, the passenger. We put a lot of energy into the quality. We also heard from a lot of electric car drivers that they're not so happy with the products available in the market right now when it comes to the quality of the build, of the fit and the finish and the materials. So we gave that a lot of love to make sure that with the iX here, we really make a point that this is a luxurious electric car, right, with a lot of quality when it comes to the materials. And then also some very, very cool gadgets and technology in the car, like one of my favorites is what the engineers call an electrochromatic sunroof. You might know that from Boeing's Dreamliner plane, where you don't make it dark in the cabin by pulling these plastic flaps up and down. You just push a button and then the windows, they get tinted, right? That you will have in the iX as well as a sunroof. So a lot of technology that went into this car. So that's the ultimate quality electric driving machine, but also tech machine, because we know that our customers appreciate these features and innovations very much. It all comes with a huge curved display. And then also what you see here is the topic of sustainability, which gets more and more important. We cannot deny it, and that's why, especially for the iX, we put a lot of energy and investment to make sure that this car is state-of-the-art when it comes to the use of materials, the recycled materials, be it the plastic that is used in the car, the wood, how we treat the materials, and so on and so forth. You still see the big double kidney grille. Obviously, the function of the kidney grille has changed. It was always for cooling the engine block directly behind it. That's obviously not necessary anymore, but we, needless to say, will not give up on the front kidney grille, because this is one of the most iconic shapes that we have when it comes to the BMW brand. For the iX, for example, the kidney grille is now more or less covering for the sensors and all the things that we need for autonomous driving, so this is all behind the kidney grille. Also, the engineers went all the way. For example, when you have a little dents in the kidney grille, we call it the self-healing material. So these little dents, they will disappear when the car is in normal room temperature after 24 hours. So a lot of features and functions that are very, very surprising, especially for a tech-savvy target audience. Last but not least, the topic of batteries, in my opinion, super important, also from, of course, performance point of view, but also from a recycling and sustainability point of view, because we need solutions in regard to where we get all these materials from. The more and more electric cars will hit the roads, we have to find answers to that. And of course, also here with the iX as an example, we looked very deep into the value chain to make sure that the materials we source are more or less sourced under good conditions for the people who are working with these materials. And the goal is that until 2030, 90% of these materials in all of our batteries that we use in our electric cars are from recycled materials, to also make here our point when it comes to sustainability. That was my quick run through the heritage of transformation under the BMW umbrella. I hope you have the time to experience some of our cars outside. As I said, there is the Generation 5 with the iX, but then also some of the more historic cars that are just fun to watch and fun to see, and also our plug-in cars that at the moment are, of course, already available here in the US, like the BMW X5 or, for example, the BMW 3 Series. And with that, thank you very much for your kind attention. I appreciate it. And I guess I hand back to Terry, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.